This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and we're going to try to get this old talking book player fully functioning today. This is from about 1947. It plays 33 1/3 RPM only, but it uses a very heavy tone arm, and it's designed to play wide groove records with grooves similar to a 78. I think I made a video of this once before, and it does play, but it's very weak, so let's try to perk it up a little bit. And just to get us started, this is our tracking pressure, 70 grams. So yeah, really about the only difference between this and a 78 RPM phono of the day is the speed of the turntable. In fact, the mechanism looks just like what you'd see in a 78 player, except the motor shaft diameter is smaller, so it'll run at 33. Now, these solar capacitors were hot stuff in their day. In fact, out of what was available back then, they were probably the best. But after 70 years, they still need to go, so we're gonna replace them and be done with it. Alright, just having a little fun checking the old capacitors. This one I can't check because in the process of unsoldering it, I melted the wax and pulled the lead out. These 2.01 solar seal tight capacitors still check just fine, wherever that one went. However, this 0.05 capacitor, which is a solar, it's leaking pretty bad at 25 volts. And this is all I get, a little narrow eye opening way above 0.05. What are we actually reading here? Closer to 0.1. So yeah, here's the 0.05 that was across the motor switch, used as a click filter. I'm sure it's going to be leaky. Let's find out. Yeah, on the value, I'm getting a very puny, blurry eye opening up above 0.1. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that one's closer to shorted than leaked. Alright, this capacitor that couples the volume control to the control grid of the driver tube, it's not even giving me an eye opening, and it's leaky as all get out. There's really no voltage there, but we'll go ahead and change it anyway. Alright, the 16 microfarad is checking pretty close to value, but the power factor is kind of high. Let's see about leakage. Yeah, that cap would probably reform if I left on for a while, but the light is staying on much longer than it would on a brand new capacitor. Checking the dual 8 section capacitor. It's not giving me anything on the meter. It's not really excessively leaky, but it's not giving me any microfarad value, probably because the thing's dried out. Alright, section number 2. Not getting nothing there either. Yeah, that's staying on a lot longer than anticipated. Reforming, probably, but still. Now the 25 at 25 volts, I'd already checked it on the modern capacitance meter, and it read 9 microfarad. On this thing, it's reading up close to 50. Leakage not going to go above 25 on that because we don't want to exceed the. And yeah, as you can see, it's pretty bad and leaky too, according to this. So when checking older high voltage capacitors, it's best to use something like this thing right here because it'll check them at rated working voltage. This is okay for just checking the capacitance value of lower voltage capacitors. And it will also tell you if a higher voltage capacitor is dried out and that it won't read any microfarad value. But as far as checking for leakage, these little modern handheld things won't cut it. You need something like this that'll do it at rated voltage. For example, this guy checked 0.01 right on the money on the little handheld meter, but when I checked it on the old school tester, it was leaky as all get out. So hopefully I made my point there. This is the 10 meg resistor that goes from the control grid to ground. You don't see them go down in value much, but this one's reading 4.5 meg. So we're going to replace that with the proper 10 meg. That should boost the gain a little bit. And here's a new 10 meg resistor, reading pretty much what it's supposed to read, so it's not my meter that's haywire, it's this other resistor that's gone down in value. Alright, that should take care of the amp, and as you can see, I left the old capacitor in with one end disconnected. The reason for that is they're using this to stabilize this signal input lead here, so I just did it this way. Could have wired the new cap in series with the old leaky one, but if the old leaky one had have ever opened up, then we'd have had a loss of signal, so I just did it this way. Alright, let's put it back together enough to see if the amp is going to work. Well, it's wide open, but I'm still getting more activity than I got before. Well, I don't have a wide groove talking book down here at the moment, but we have a 78, and as you can tell, it is passing audio. And it's loud enough now that it's rattling the speakers, so I'd say this amp is probably fixed. Now we need to move on to the drive mechanism, but that can wait until tomorrow. Here's what the cartridge looks like, in case anybody's interested. It's an static cartridge. I assume it's crystal. I think they made a magnetic that looked like this, but I also think they made a crystal too. So just wanted to pull it out and kind of get a glance at it. Yeah, that's got to be a crystal. I'm checking across it with the ohm meter, and I'm not reading anything across it. If it was a magnetic, I think I would read something. Now, years ago, I had one of these machines that someone heavily modified when 16 RPM records came out. They had replaced the original single-speed drive with a 16 and 33 drive, and they fashioned up a huge, big counterweight on the back of the tone arm and installed an 89T cartridge, and it worked really well, but it was in kind of bad cosmetic shape, and I ended up scrapping it for parts. I think I gave the amplifier to somebody for some kind of project, but yeah, this cartridge may be weak, but tomorrow we'll bring a talking book out here that's suitable for this machine and see how loud it gets.
And then loved him. For Peter, in spite of his holiness, had the
Alright, there we are.
Creation in his veins. Yet in a way, it was like mixing nitroglycerin with olive oil, or dynamite and saltpeter with milk and honey. Peter's heart was thumping rapidly as he took a step toward the deeper shaft.
That's wide open. I think that cartridge probably is a little weak, but it has enough output to be heard.
Telling him, and he would go in. Slowly the gloom engulfed him, and once again the whimsical...
And we also have to keep in mind that this is a well-worn record, and these spoken word recordings are not cut as loud as a music record. So, but yeah, you know, this is not something that we're going to use every day. This is more of a historical piece than anything else. In fact, this record player would really be of no use to the average person, because even though it runs at 33, you couldn't play a 33 micro groove album on it. So about all this is good for is someone like me who appreciates vintage talking book playback equipment, and there's not many of us like me around, so This will just be something I can pull out every now and then and play with. Now I am going to lubricate the drive mechanism even though it works. 70-year-old lubricant needs to be cleaned out and have some fresh put in its place, so we'll do that here shortly. Alright, here we are. I didn't do a complete teardown on this. I sort of cheated since it was working so well anyway, and since this is not something I'm going to be using. Took the spindle out, cleaned that, and re-lubricated it with light lithium grease. And for the motor, I just used my zoom spout here. Put some oil on the top and bottom, oiled the idler wheel shaft, cleaned the motor shaft, turntable rim, and idler wheel surface with rubber renew, and it seems to be okay. The idler wheel has a little dent in it, so it would need to be rebuilt, but running at 33, it's not that noticeable, and like I've already said, this is not something I'm going to be using on a regular basis. This is more of a historical piece than anything else. Here's the schematic, and it's unusual that this actually uses a filter choke in the power supply, so that tells me this is a high quality amplifier. They wanted to have as little background noise as possible, and this was manufactured by Sandwick-Bowen Corporation, which they were a major player in the commercial phonograph market back in the 40s and early 50s. I know they made a lot of phonographs for the military and some school phonographs. I have one here somewhere from the 1940s. It's just a 78 RPM only job. In fact, this one could be converted to 78 RPM if I wanted to swap the motor out, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to keep this one as it is. Preserve a piece of history here. Here's the speaker, a nice 8-inch Rolla permanent magnet speaker. Date coded the 6th week of 47. I had to take this apart to clean the case really well, so figured I might as well show you this speaker while we have it apart. Here's a 10-inch record, the Book of Ephesians from the Holy Bible from 1949, read by Alexander Scorby. This one should probably be playable on this.
The Holy Bible, the Epistle of Paul the Apostle to the Ephesians, complete on one record, recorded for the American Bible Society and the Talking Book Studios of American Foundation for the Blind Incorporated, read by Alexander Scorby. Chapter 1 through Chapter 3. Chapter 1. Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ by the will of God, to the saints which are at Ephesus.
Yeah, but we're doing a number on those record grooves.
Grace be to you.
I think I need to get because that's an old steel needle. It's probably past its prime anyway. So, yeah, I think we need to get another needle. And like I said, I know this cartridge is probably weak, but for something that's never going to be used, I'm not too concerned about it right now. As long as it has reasonable volume, we're going to leave it at that.
The Holy Bible, the Gospel according to St. Luke, complete on 5 records, recorded for the American Bible Society and the Talking Book Studios of American Foundation for the Blind Incorporated, read by Alexander Scorby. Chapter 1 through Chapter 2, verse 40. Chapter 1. For as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order a declaration of those things which are most surely believed among us, even as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. It seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write unto thee in order, most excellent,
Well, that was cute. That's what happens when you're not careful. But those records are already well worn, well beat up anyway, and I believe I have multiple copies of some of these. But you can see it's doing a number to the grooves on these things. So yeah, we're going to have to come up with a proper needle. I think these are supposed to use medium tone steel needles, if I'm not mistaken. I think I remember reading that on the instructions for an older machine than this one. And yes, you're supposed to change the needle after every side of the record. So yeah, we've come a long way in blind talking book technology. Now everything's on a digital cartridge.
Page 2. The Country Beyond. A man had come out of the cabin, and close behind the man, a woman. The man was a long, lean, cadaverous-faced creature, and Peter knew that the devil was in him as he stood there at the cabin door. His breath, if one had stood close enough to smell it, was heavy with whiskey. Tobacco juice stained the corners of his mouth, and his one eye gleamed with an animal-like exultation as he nodded toward the girl with the shining curls.
Yeah, that's plenty loud enough.
He'll pay $7.50 for her when he gets his tie money from the government, and he paid me $50 down, he said. It'll help pay for the brat's board these last 10 years, and maybe when it comes to a showdown, I can stick him for $1,000. The woman made no answer. She was, in a way, past answering with a mind of her own. The man, as he stood there, was wicked and cruel. Every line in his ugly face was a line of...
These talking books I received from a friend who got them from a blind school years ago who were throwing them away. I think this is the oldest one he sent me, and the newest one he sent was, I think, an 8 RPM record from the early 70s. This one's from 1939, still has a more recent library card in it, with dates from 1967 through 1972. I guess 72 was the last time this book was checked out, and it would have sounded like crap played on a more recent talking book machine of the day, because it would have had the microgroove needle in it.
He'll pay. Jed. The woman's voice rose above its hoarseness. Jed, it ain't right. The man laughed. He opened his mouth wide until his yellow fangs gleamed in the sun, and the girl...
All right, there you go. This one's serviced, and it's safe to use now. Piece of rare talking book history preserved. I don't imagine there's too many of these floating around. In comparison to regular consumer-grade phonographs, there wasn't many of these made anyway, and when you think about all the ones that were destroyed or thrown out whenever they were turned back into the library for newer machines, the amount that survive are even less today. Now this one here was actually available for purchase, and they were actually also made for the Library of Congress talking book program too, so.
For a moment was stunned. After he had delivered her to the other shack, it would all be up to Mooney, he figured. And this was what had come of his peace-loving effort. She was taking advantage of him, defying him, spying upon him, the brat he had fed and brought up for 10 years. Her beauty as she stood there did not hold him back. It was punishment she needed, a beating, a hair-pulling, until there was no breath left in her impudent body. He sprang forward, and Peter let out a wild yip as he saw Nada raise her stick. But she was a moment too slow. The man's hand caught it, and his right hand shot forward and buried itself in the thick, soft mass of her hair. This book is continued on the next record.